All right, so I will continue to try to monitor the waiting room. Looks like everyone there's no one left in the waiting room at the moment, so I'm going to go ahead and mute everyone's microphones for the time being. As I will, we've got about 10 or so slides here to get through. I'll try to get through them relatively quickly and try to save most of the time for questions that you may have regarding your particular application. And one moment here, I'll allow getting one more person to the waiting room. So again, we are recording, and I've muted everyone for the time being. So I can get through the slides. And if you have any questions, throughout the slides here, feel free to put them into the chat box. That way we can catalog them for the Q&A at the end of the session. But if you do have any pressing questions, feel free to unmute yourself and chime in. We're certainly trying to be as interactive as possible here. The main goal of the session today is to help answer any questions that you have. But with that, I've got a few slides that I will go through here, and then we'll do a brief walkthrough of the application process as well. So the Forestry Recovery Initiative, Phase 2, working towards the application deadline, which is October the 18th, so a little bit less than 2 weeks away. Some quick background on where this funding came from. The American Rescue Plan Act of 2021 was passed last March. This was funding for all 50 states, for various COVID mitigation costs. And a significant amount of funding came to Maine that didn't have a specific prescribed use required. So about $1 billion of discretionary spending, which Maine's state legislature then approved a spending plan in July of last year to utilize these recovery funds through a bill that became known as the Maine Jobs and Recovery Plan. The state now has a website, maine.gov/jobs plan. And this is the most comprehensive catalog out there of all these, over 100 different funding initiatives that were approved in the state legislature's spending plan for this recovery money. So as those programs continue to be deployed by the various departments involved, those get announced by the governor and posted to the website, information about how to apply, who's eligible, and all those type of things. There's a number of different eligibility requirements and different application process depending on the specific initiative. And again, this maine.gov/jobs plan is the best place to go for information on those. They continue to be deployed. There's a significant amount of state and federal oversight involved in each of these initiatives to ensure that the funding is indeed being used effectively and to address negative impacts of the COVID pandemic, and as much as possible to try to direct this funding to the communities that were most acutely impacted by the pandemic. So the forestry industry is one of the specific initiatives approved by the state legislature spending plan. Maine Technology Institute has been involved in deploying both phases of this forestry recovery initiative in collaboration with Maine's Department of Economic and Community Development, as well as the Department of Agriculture, Conservation, and Forestry. The state spending plan allocated $20 million for this forestry recovery from the COVID pandemic. Earlier this year, we put to work just over $6 million to over 200 small businesses in the forest products industry. And now we're moving on to phase 2 for the remaining funds, just over a little bit more than $13 million available for larger strategic projects with the goal of funding significant development opportunities that are going to have more substantial impact on the forest products industry for Maine moving forward, helping us to grow and diversify the industry to hopefully be more resilient to economic shocks moving forward. Now, the goal is to get all of the applications reviewed and awards announced by the end of November this year. We will do our best to stick to that timeline. If we get significantly more applications than expected, it might take us a few more weeks to get all the applications reviewed and scored. It is going to be a competitive application process, which differs from the phase one of this initiative, and I'll speak to that a little bit more in the next slide. But the application deadline, again, is 2 Tuesdays away, October the 18th, and that's a Tuesday. So that evening, 11:59 on Tuesday, October, excuse me, 11:59 on October the 18th, that Tuesday, is the application deadline. So we do encourage everyone to try to get your application submitted by the end of next week, if at all possible. Just waiting till the very last minute can, lead to some frustrating and stressful situations. So obviously you do have until the end of the day on Tuesday, but we encourage you to try to get everything together well in advance, just so we don't run into any issues in trying to get everything successfully submitted through our online portal by the deadline. So as I mentioned, this phase two of the Forestry Recovery Initiative is different from the first phase. So it's not a continuation of phase one, which phase one was really more just very immediate financial assistance to small businesses that were that suffered losses from the pandemic. So things like loss of revenue or increased costs. Those are the type of things that the sorry about that. Phase one was focused on those basically recoveries, compensation for losses over the last year and a half, last couple of years since the pandemic started. So phase two of the program, of the initiative, is going to be different in that it's forward looking. We are looking to fund strategic projects that are proposing to be completed over the next year to 2, even to 3 years. So these are much larger projects with the hope of increasing productivity, increasing demand for Maine timber products, particularly low grade timber, with the hope increasing the value of timber products from Maine as well. So just kind of larger strategic improvements for the industry moving forward. So not every company is going to receive an award in phase two. That's different from phase one, where we ensured that every eligible company did receive some financial assistance. These are going to be larger awards made to maybe somewhere between 20 and 30 awards most likely will get approved. It ultimately depends on how many applications we receive and how strongly each of them score, and then we'll make the determination on how many we can fund. If that being said, if you are a company who either benefited from the first phase of this initiative, or you didn't get a chance to take advantage of the phase one when it was available, there is still other recovery funding available for individual small businesses that are looking for compensation due to losses from the pandemic. That funding is available currently through a program deployed by Fame Maine. So if you go to famemaine.com, their Thrive Fund, they just opened that funding program up this week, and that money is likely to be, it's first come, first serve. So that money is likely to be depleted in the next week or two. So I encourage you to go to Fame's website and explore the Thrive program if that's if you're looking for recovery funding specific to your business. I'm happy to try to answer any more questions on that front as well when we get to the end here and for the question and answer session. So a few things about eligibility for this Recovery Initiative Phase 2. You have to have a significant presence in Maine, Or if you don't already have a significant presence in Maine, the plans for the proposed use of funds have to be for Maine-based operations that you're establishing. You obviously have to be involved in the forest products industry. So they generally define that as involved in the harvest, transportation, or processing of forest products utilizing Maine timber. You're going to have a clear plan to utilize the funding, and with the outcomes being significant revenue growth and quality job creation and retention here in Maine. There are federal and state reporting requirements that come along with this funding. And in addition to being in good standing with Maine's corporate registry through the Secretary of State, you also have to obtain a federal unique entity identification number. That can be obtained from sam.gov. This is a registration process that has frustrated a number of small businesses over the past few months as we've been deploying various recovery funding initiatives. And I have another slide towards the end of our presentation today to speak a little bit more specifically about how to navigate that sam.gov site. So we'll get to that shortly. Briefly, so I've mentioned that this is going to be a competitive application process. Not every application is going to get funding approved in this case. However, we're going to try to fund as many competitive applications as possible. And there's 4 main categories of assessment and scoring. So that we have a evaluation criteria to score each of these applications, and we've got a team of reviewers who are going to be conducting the reviews over the course of the next month or so. Obviously, the most critical aspect is what's the economic impact for Maine and the forest products industry going to be, measuring that in terms of jobs created, retained, and improved. Obviously the team, both the current team as well as the plans to attract and retain workers moving forward. And we're looking for folks to be able to demonstrate clearly that there's a strong market demand for their proposed product, technology / solution. And we want to see some clear differentiation, some competitive advantage to be able to compete with existing alternatives in the market. And we want to see a technical plan to utilize the funding effectively over the next few years. In addition to the funding you're requesting from the Forestry Recovery Initiative, we do expect applicants to invest matching funds into these efforts as well. Generally, at least a 1-to-1 match is considered a strong match. The more matching funds you're bringing to the table, generally speaking, the stronger the project is going to be in the eyes of the reviewers, just because presumably there's a larger development project there with more significant growth potential. But again, as noted in the team section here, we don't just want people telling us they're going to create 100 new jobs. We want to see what's the plan for a reasonable amount of new employment as well as retaining existing employees and improving existing jobs, both in terms of increased pay and greater productivity. And we just want to see a clear plan in place to make sure that any proposed growth is likely to be achieved. So those are the 4 key areas of evaluation. Now I'm going to just quickly do a screen share to walk through the application process. Most of you have already been to the website, I assume, because you were able to sign up for this Zoom session. So there is a details page for this phase 2 of the Forestry Recovery Initiative. A few icons here to skip to different portions, different sections of the program outlined here. How to apply. The first step is to download the application Word document. So this is the most critical piece of the application, and this is that document. On the first page of the application Word document, There are 3 steps that outline how to successfully complete the application process. So the first step is, you save this application Word document on your desktop. The next 8 pages go through a number of questions about your business and about each of those evaluation sections I just mentioned on the last slide. There's a handful of electronic files you're going to need to upload into our online application portal. Those are all listed here in this checklist. We'll need your income statements for the past 2 years, as well as year-to-date for 2022, current balance sheet. We'll need a W-9 form for tax purposes, and then there's also a 2-page agreement just to understand you're agreeing to comply with the federal and state requirements around this funding opportunity. And that agreement is also downloadable on the website page. So there's no need to worry about the online application until you've got all this stuff in steps 1 and 2 done. You got to get all these documents together. You got to answer all the questions on the next 7 pages of this Word document. Once you've got all those completed and together, you then use the hyperlink right here in step 3. You can cut and paste this, or you can click on it to bring you to the actual online application portal, which is right here. And I'll quickly I'll log into this to give folks a sense of how it works. If you've never applied for MTI funding before, you'll have to create an account here. So you'll want to click on the new applicant link. It'll ask you for an email address. You want to make sure to use an active email address that you're using currently. We're going to use this email address to contact you, both with first to confirm that your application was successfully submitted, and then secondly to request any additional information needed to complete the application review. And then lastly, we'll also use this email address to communicate funding decisions once all the applications have been reviewed. So again, be sure to use a current and working email address, and then you'll be asked to create a password as well. Once you've got that, you can log in. And this is not the fastest website that I've ever worked with, so a little bit of patience is required. Once you've got all the electronic files and your application Word document responses completed, you shouldn't need more than a half hour to complete the online application. Probably can get it done in significantly less time than that. Sorry about that. I'm getting a little bit of a 1 second. Sorry about that. Unexpected step in the process, but after I think every year or so, you're required to update the password. In fact, they actually might have increased that to every 3 months or so. You have to update the password just for security reasons. So once you've logged in, this is the online application portal. There's a few tabs here. This first application tab gives some basic instructions on how to complete the online application. I'll just scroll down here briefly to see there's basic contact information for the business, some demographic information, and then a couple of high-level pieces of data regarding your funding request. And this is all information we need for our reporting purposes to both the state and federal governments who are monitoring the funding. Once you've got all these fields completed, you move to the Upload Documents tab. This is where you upload all those files identified in the checklist from the instructions in the application Word document. You choose a file, and then once you've chosen a file, you click Upload to get it uploaded. And then I'll quickly do that here just for a quick demonstration. So once you've selected a file, you can upload, and then the upload process can take 10 to 20 seconds sometimes, and it seems like an eternity while you're waiting. But once the hyperlink appears, you'll know that you've completed the upload. So you have to do that for each of these sections here. There's a little red X next to each required field. And once you've got all these items done, you can click Submit Your Application. And if there's any pieces of the application that you haven't completed yet, It'll ask you to do that, and then it'll tell you any fields that you haven't completed. Once you've completed all the required fields, it'll let you submit. And once that's done, you can click the submit button and you'll receive an email confirmation. And that email confirmation is how you know that you've completed the online application process. And again, that notification email will go to the application, to the email address you use to create your login there for the online portal. So that's the basics of how to submit the applications through our online application portal. As I mentioned, once all the applications are submitted, once the deadline passes on Tuesday the 18th, we'll get all the applications collected, and our team of reviewers will score each application, and then we'll determine how many of the applications we can fund with the funds available. We do anticipate a number of applications requesting far more funding than we have available, but we will try to fund as many competitive projects as possible with the $13 million we have. And again, we hope to complete and announce the awards by the end of November, and ideally start deploying some of the funding before the end of the year, particularly for these larger awards. It's unlikely that all the funds will be deployed up front. Most likely a portion of the funding will be deployed initially. There will be some reporting, some project milestones to be completed before the rest of the funds are deployed. We're expecting awards as small as a couple $100,000 all the way up to $2 million. We expect that $2 million will be the largest award made to any individual company applying for funding. But again, it kind of depends on how many competitive projects end up being submitted by the deadline. So one more slide here, just again on this UEID registration that is required for receiving any of these federal recovery funds. This is a registration that you have to complete through the federal website, www.sam.gov. It is a free registration process. So, if you're getting some sort of, seeing some sort of advertisement on a website to, help with your SAM registration, they shouldn't be charging you for that. It's a free registration process, and there's free support offered by Maine's Maine PTAC, which we can connect you with those folks as well. But we do have support services here in Maine for companies that are struggling with the registration process. When you get to the sam.gov website, you click on the Get Started option. It'll ask you to create a login. That's all separate from the login you're creating for MTI's online application portal that we just walked through. You can search to see if you already have a UEID. If you've done work with the federal government in the past, you may have one already. One quick tip, there's two options once you get started with this sam.gov website. You can either choose to register your entity or get your unique entity ID. And we strongly encourage you to focus on the second option, because this is a much shorter process. Most of the folks that we've encountered that are waiting weeks and unfortunately months in some cases to get their UEID registered, they've made this mistake of clicking the first option, which is a more involved process and requires manual review by folks at sam.gov. So quick tip there is to go with the second option, get unique entity ID. We also have on our website a recorded video of Maine PTAC specialist Brian Wallace walking through the sam.gov website and registration process. So there's a link to that right here, and it's also on our website. Again, we encourage you to seek out that guidance in advance of going to register the UEID. If you don't already have one, hopefully you do. So that is the end of the slide that I have for everyone today. We can happy to stay on as long as needed to answer any and all questions that you have. Once this session is done, we do have our recorded Zoom session up on the Forestry website already. And you can also email us directly any questions specific to the forestry program. We have an email address, arpagrants@maintechnology.org. So that's where we'd ask you send any questions regarding the forestry program. So with that, I don't see any questions in the chat, but if anyone wants to come off mute and just ask a question, feel free to do so. If you want to type a question into the chat, you can do that as well. Hold on one second here. Okay, good. All right, so a couple questions. How up to date does the balance sheet need to be? I would just say as current as possible. Ideally, end of third quarter would be best. But just as current as it can be would be ideal. And again, you've got until the 18th to get everything submitted. So let's see, how long does it take to get the UEID? That's a good question. I really can't say that there's a particularly consistent average right now. Some people are able to get it literally within a day or two of signing up, particularly if they go with that second option. But other people, it's taken maybe a couple weeks, and then, like I said, in a number of cases, folks are having to wait a month or two to get everything worked out. And I'm not really an expert on that site, so I unfortunately don't have a whole lot of insight into what is causing all the delays and how to avoid them. But I will say that my colleague Brian Wallace at Maine PTAC that I mentioned a moment ago, he does have a lot more insight. You can also email him directly, and his email address is available if you look at that recorded video we have on our website specific to UEID support. So I encourage you again to check that out. And the good news is, at least I will say, with this program, if you've started the process of registering the UEID, but you're still waiting on it, or if you start the process tomorrow and you're still waiting on it when that application deadline of the 18th rolls around, that's okay, because we can still process your application. Even if your UEID is pending, we'll review your application and we'll score it against all the other applications. It won't impact your score, but if you are approved funding, we will need to get that UEID registration completed before we can actually give you any of the funding. So, that's again a thing we'll try to work with you to provide whatever support we can to help complete that process. So those are all the questions that we've got in the chat so far. Any other questions folks want to type into the chat, or if anybody wants to unmute and chime in? I'll stay on the line here for another couple minutes. Go ahead.
Hi, Bill Bayreuther with Robbins Lumber, East Baldwin. Thank you for this session. Couple of questions. Will an applicant that identifies as a woman-owned business be accorded any sort of competitive advantage in the review?
That is not one of the evaluation criteria, so that wouldn't be impacting the scoring.
Okay. And some housekeeping questions, perhaps they'd be helpful for other folks. My organization is a wholly owned subsidiary of a parent company, and we're clear that Section 2 of the Word document pertains to the parent company. Mm-hmm. But should sections 3 and 7 in the application Word document pertain purely to the applicant or the parent company?
Well, that's a good question. I think that I'll put it up here on the page here so everybody can see. Right. Okay. So I would say that I think overall I think we'd prefer to see this section also focused on at the parent company level.
Okay, we can certainly do that.
Yeah, I think that'd be the most straightforward way to do it. We may follow up with some questions, and if there's going to be, I think the one question would be when you're talking about the projections, you're also talking about the projections at the parent company level as well. So that might involve, some projections beyond the scope of what you're proposing to do in section 7.
Yes.
But I would say, in section 7 here is the quality job section, right? Yeah. So generally, I would say stick to the parent company level as much as it makes sense to across each section of the application.
Okay. Including the impact in the questions in between 3 and 7.
Right.
We can certainly discuss the impact on the applicant business, the subsidiary. Right. And then my last question, thank you for your patience. In section 2, would you prefer that the brief summary of your annual P&L projections for 22 and 23 be a narrative or spreadsheet form?
Well, honestly, I think in the down here in section 6, we're looking for more of like a spreadsheet of the summary financial projections. So yep. In the section 2 up here, I think this is more of a high level, just a narrative of just kind of at a high level. Here's what we're looking at. Are we, we breaking even? Are we in the red or in the black? That's kind of all we're really looking for in this particular question.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Yeah, no, good question. Thank you. All right, we do have a few more questions in the chat box now. So allow me to go through those one at a time here. Let's see here. Okay, will awards be all or nothing for each applicant, or is it possible that awards will be made for less than the requested amounts? Great question. So it's definitely possible. I would not say that it's going to be all or nothing. It's definitely possible that if a company requests 2 million, they might get significantly less than that. As far as what that formula is going to be, it's really going to come down to how many applications get submitted and how well each of those applications scores. Again, the goal here is to try to fund as many competitive projects as possible. So, if we give each, application that we're choosing to award a haircut of 10%, and that enables us to fund 3 or 4 more projects, that's something that would probably be justifiable. But again, it's really going to come down to to how many competitive applications end up getting submitted and how well they all score. Let's see here. Okay. So we've got a few more here. Do forest products nonprofits qualify? I would say that a nonprofit is not excluded from applying, but the evaluation criteria are going to be the same whether you're a nonprofit or a for-profit. So we're still looking for supporting job creation and retention, improve job quality, and helping strengthen the forest products industry in Maine as a whole. So it's not completely out of the question that a nonprofit could put together a competitive application, but that would just be that would be up to the applicant to make a compelling application. And if there's any, that might be something worth some more specific questions. Feel free to follow up via email with some more specific questions about how you're trying to frame your proposal. But I would say, I think this is generally geared towards for-profit industries, for-profit companies for sure. But it's not to say that a nonprofit is completely excluded. So, okay, a couple more in here. For 5-year projections, if there's a construction period with no operations, should the applicant provide 5 years with an initial 0 period, or 5 years of operation after. I would say start the 5 years starts like with 2023, whether there's a bunch of construction involved or not, unless it takes you longer than that to raise the money to get started. But generally, I would say include the construction. The construction is part of the project, because those are going to be your matching funds as well, and very likely, you can utilize these forestry recovery funds to help fund the construction costs as well. So yeah, the construction costs are part of the project, part of the 5 years. Let's see here. Okay, I think I've answered most of the questions. One more here. Okay. So do you want to see innovations in forestry? Okay, yeah. So this, I would say that, this is, I'll go back to one of these slides here to help answer the question. 1 second here. So, we are definitely, part of what we're hoping to fund is, innovative products and technologies that are going to help increase demand for Maine timber, globally, things that can increase productivity as well. So, it doesn't have to be a completely new technology to qualify. And we want to make sure that we're funding technologies that have, a proven market, a proven demand and need as well. So we're not looking to just fund science projects here. We are definitely looking to fund, commercial opportunities. But we're not, this program is definitely completely different, completely separate from core MTI funding. That really is very much focused on research and development and innovation. So while that's an aspect of what we're looking at here in the Forestry Recovery Initiative, this is playing by a different set of rules, dictated by the fact that it's federal recovery money from the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021. And the idea behind the Maine legislature approving this money specifically for the forestry industry is that, recognizing the fact that the forest industry as a whole did experience downturns since the onset of the pandemic. So that's why this money was approved, to try to invest in some significant strategic investments, some development opportunities to strengthen the industry here in the state moving forward. So hopefully that answers that question. How much detail is desirable and what is being built? Proposal for where a pellet plant is it sufficient to say pellet plant, or is a complete design required, or somewhere in between? Well, that's a good question. I would say that, so you can definitely, if you have, business plan, or if you have, design, plans and everything already, written, you can certainly try to utilize existing materials as much as possible. We don't need all of the information necessarily, but I think it just needs to be concise and clear as to what you're going to do with the money, and how this is going to help you increase revenues, how it's going to help you improve job quality, add new employees. These are the type of things that we're looking to try to have, a reasonable case made. So, it has to be a little bit more than just saying we're going to make a pellet plant and hire 15 people, but it doesn't have to be, all 200 pages of your business plan, if that makes sense. So, I think that we're not looking for a novel in the application, maybe a couple few pages on the technical plan section, maybe a little bit more than that if there's some really dynamic technology development involved. But if it's a little more straightforward project, then probably won't need quite as much writing, if that makes sense. So, but it kind of depends a little bit on what's being proposed. I will say that, we can ask for, we may need to go back and ask for more information if it's not clear, but I would say generally you probably want to err on the side of providing a little bit too much information, provide a little bit more information than you think is the bare minimum. Because we're going to work with what's submitted. And that's going to be, you know, the basis of what the review team is making their decisions on. If there's any additional information that you can't upload into the portal, but you want to share with us, you can email it to that arpagrants@maintechnology.org email address, and just make sure you're clear that you want that addition. You can email us additional information as an attached file, and just be clear you want that added to your application, and just make sure to do that before the application deadline of Tuesday, October the 18th. So hopefully that is all helpful info. And again, those are all great questions. Thank you very much for staying on and asking those questions. Any other questions that anybody has, feel free to chime in. It looks like there's a hand up. Claudia?
I'm actually asking for somebody else, but would a carbon credit business be fundable under this FR1 or FR2?
When you say a carbon credit business, do you mean?
Yeah, I think they're doing sequestering forestry. I'm really out of my realm. I've got my own thing, but which I know pretty clearly. But somebody else wanted to do like a carbon credit business, and I'm really working my language here.
Okay.
And I just didn't know if services is fundable.
Well, I mean, I think it would be, to be able to most accurately answer the question, I think it would be helpful to have a little bit more specifics on what exactly is being
I'll ask.
proposed. I mean, I would say that it's, you know, it's not necessarily out of the question if the company is producing, you know, if they're making like biochar or something that, you know, and there's some sort of, they're getting some sort of carbon sequestration credits as part of their revenue stream, you know, that's something that they're producing with Maine timber. That would conceivably be something that would be a, you know, make for a decent proposal in this program. So, you know, and you know, at the end of the day, you know, the application is there for anybody to submit an application, you know, but
Sure.
you know, whether or not it will end up scoring competitively really, you know, comes down to, you know, the work done after the deadline with our review team.
Sure. I might have them directly reach out to you. Just
Mhm.
thought I'd try. Thank you
Sounds good.
kindly.
Sure. All right. Well, very good. All right. Well, I think I've answered all the questions that are in the chat box. If I haven't, again, please chime in. I'll stay on for another minute or two here, just to allow anybody else a chance to chime in with a question that they have been waiting to ask. But other than that, thank you all for attending our session today. Again, a reminder that our application deadline is Tuesday, October the 18th, 11:59 p.m. on Tuesday the 18th. So a little bit less than 2 weeks to go. And again, I do encourage you to try to get your application started as soon as possible, and you know, certainly try to get it submitted you know, either that week before or over that weekend before the deadline, just because, you know, usually there's a little bit of a mad rush at the right at the deadline there, you know, and you know, we have a limited staff available here, but we're trying to provide as much technical support as we can. But again, the more in advance you can get everything submitted to the online portal, the less stress you'll have in getting everything taken care of. So I wish you all good luck in completing the application, and we look forward to getting as many compelling applications as possible and putting this money to work for Maine's forestry industry here by the end of the year. All right, so thank you all again and have a great afternoon.